Carl Tremaine was declared dead in March of 1924. No body was recovered. No radio was recovered. The file from Hudoo Basin includes a single field notebook. It was found open on the table. Last entry, October 12, 1923. In the margin, in different handwriting, there is a short note. No date, no initials. It says the voice came in while the station was under direct observation, and no one was there. The Absaroka Range runs along the eastern edge of Yellowstone, where Montana and Wyoming meet in a fold of granite and ice. It's a place that doesn't forgive mistakes. Even now, with roads and radios and helicopters, people vanish there every year. In the early 1920s, it was worse. The peaks rise above 10,000 feet. The valleys between them are narrow and steep, choked with lodgepole pine and Douglas fir. In winter, the snow comes fast. It buries trails. It erases landmarks. A man caught in the open has maybe an hour before his body stops trying to keep warm. The nearest town was Cook City, a mining camp with a post office and a general store. From there, it was 2 days on horseback to reach the ranger stations scattered along the high country. Those stations were small. 1 room, a stove, a cot. They were built to last the summer, not the winter. But someone had to stay. The Forest Service didn't have many men back then. The ones they sent were expected to work alone for weeks at a time. They watched for fires. They checked trap lines. They kept notes on weather and wildlife and anything else that seemed worth recording. Most of them were good at being alone. The station we're concerned with was called Hudoo Basin. It sat at the base of a cirque, tucked into a stand of spruce where the wind couldn't reach it. There was a creek nearby that ran clear even in August. The trail in was 7 miles from the main ridge, and it switchbacked through scree fields that shifted underfoot. It wasn't a place you visited by accident. The ranger assigned there, in the fall of 1923, was named Carl Tremaine. He was 29 years old. He'd worked for the Forest Service since 1919, mostly in Idaho and western Montana. His supervisor described him as competent and quiet, the kind of man who didn't need much. Tremaine had a radio. That was new. The Forest Service had just started issuing them to the more remote stations. Big, heavy units that ran on batteries and could barely reach 50 miles in good weather. They weren't reliable, but they were better than nothing. Tremaine's last scheduled check-in was on October 12, 1923. He reported clear skies, no fires, no visitors. He mentioned that the aspen were turning early and that he'd seen a mountain lion near the creek 2 days prior. His voice, according to the ranger who took the transmission, sounded normal. The next check-in was supposed to happen on October 14th. It didn't. That wasn't unusual. Radios failed. Batteries died. Sometimes the weather came in and the signal just wouldn't carry. The supervising ranger, a man named Holland, made a note of it and waited. On October 15th, a storm moved through the Absarokas. It wasn't forecasted. It came down from Canada, fast and cold, dropping 6 feet of snow in 2 days. The temperature fell to 10 below zero. The wind stripped bark from the trees. Holland tried to raise Tremaine on the radio every few hours, but there was no response. By October 17th, the storm had passed. Holland organized a search party. It took them 3 days just to reach the trailhead. The snow was too deep for horses, so they went on foot, breaking trail with snowshoes. They reached Hudoo Basin on October 21st. The station was intact. The door was closed, but not locked. Inside, everything looked normal. The stove was cold. The cot was made. Tremaine's coat was hanging on a nail by the door. His boots were under the cot, still laced. His radio was gone. There were supplies on the shelf. Canned goods, flour, coffee, matches. His rifle was leaning in the corner. His logbook was on the table, open to the last entry. It was dated October 12th, the same day as his final transmission. The entry read, "Weather holding. Checked the North Ridge this morning. Found tracks near the old sheep camp. Probably elk. Radio battery low. Will replace tomorrow. Everything quiet. That was all. Holland and his men searched the area for 2 days. They found no tracks leading away from the station. The snow had covered everything. They checked the surrounding forest, the creek, the ridge above the basin. There was no sign of Tremaine. They assumed he'd been caught in the storm. Maybe he'd gone out to check the trap line. Maybe he'd fallen through the ice on the creek. Maybe the cold had taken him before he could make it back. It happens. The search was called off on October 23rd. Holland filed a report with the district office. Tremaine was listed as missing, presumed dead. His family was notified. The station was closed for the season. That should have been the end of it. On October 29th, 6 days after the search was abandoned, the radio at the Cook City Ranger Station crackled to life. It was early in the morning, just after dawn. The ranger on duty, a man named Peter Souls, was making coffee when he heard it. At first, he thought it was interference. The signal was weak and broken, cutting in and out, but then he heard a voice. It was Tremaine. Souls grabbed a pencil and started writing. The transmission lasted less than a minute. Most of it was unintelligible, static and wind and something that might have been breathing. But there were words. Souls wrote them down exactly as he heard them. Battery dead. Had to. The ridge. Can't. Then, they're not. And finally, it's not wind. The signal cut out. Souls tried to respond. He called Tremaine's station sign repeatedly, asking for his location, asking if he needed help. There was no answer. He notified Holland immediately. Holland didn't believe it at first. He thought Souls had misheard another station, or that someone was playing a prank. But Souls was certain. He knew Tremaine's voice. He'd taken dozens of transmissions from him over the past 2 months. Holland sent a second search party. They reached Hudoo Basin on November 2nd. The snow was deeper now, nearly 8 feet in the basin itself. The station looked exactly as they'd left it. The door was still closed. The interior was undisturbed. The radio was still missing. They expanded the search. They checked every ridge, every drainage, every stand of timber within 5 miles of the station. They found nothing. No tracks, no blood, no wreckage. On November 4th, while the search party was still in the field, the radio at Cook City transmitted again. This time, it was evening. The ranger on duty was Holland himself. He'd stayed behind to coordinate the search. When he heard the static, he grabbed the microphone immediately. The voice that came through was quieter than before, slower. Holland wrote down what he could. Wrong about the elevation. It's lower. A long pause. Then, the map doesn't show it. Nobody's been. Another pause. Longer this time. Holland asked for coordinates. He asked for a landmark. Anything. The voice came back one more time. I can see the station from here. The transmission ended. Holland stood there with the microphone in his hand for a long time. He didn't move. He didn't call back. He just listened to the static. The statement didn't make sense. If Tremaine could see the station, then he was close. Maybe a few hundred yards at most. The basin was small. The search party had covered every inch of it. There was nowhere to hide. Nowhere to transmit from that wouldn't have left tracks or some sign of passage. And yet the voice had been clear. Not panicked, not confused, just factual. Holland radioed the search party immediately. He told them what he'd heard. He told them to return to the station and search again. They did. They spent the next day combing the basin and the surrounding ridges. They climbed to every point that had a line of sight to the station. They found nothing. On November 6th, the search was called off for the second time. The snow was too deep. The cold was too severe. Holland filed another report. This one was shorter. It noted the radio transmissions, but offered no explanation for them. The file was marked inactive. There was one more transmission. It came through on November 9th, 3 days after the search ended. The ranger on duty at Cook City was a younger man named Harlow. He'd only been with the Forest Service for a year. He wasn't expecting anything when he sat down at the radio that morning. The signal came in strong, clearer than the others. Harlow wrote it down word for word. His handwriting, according to the report, was shaky. The transmission said, "Found the old camp." It's not on any map. The structures are still standing, but they're wrong. The doors face the wrong direction. The windows are too low. A pause. Then, there are tracks here. Another pause. I don't think I should follow them. The signal cut out. It never came back. Harlow tried to raise Tremaine for the next hour. He got nothing. Holland was notified. He authorized one final search. But the weather had turned again. Another storm was moving in. It would be spring before anyone could reach Hudoo Basin. By then, it didn't matter. The file was closed in March of 1924. Tremaine was declared dead. His name was added to a memorial plaque in the Cook City Ranger Station. The plaque is still there. His body was never found. Neither was the radio. There are explanations for what happened to Carl Tremaine. Most of them are reasonable. Some of them are even likely. Hypothermia, for instance. It's well documented that severe cold affects the brain in specific ways. People in the late stages of hypothermia often experience something called paradoxical undressing. They feel hot. They remove their clothing. They wander away from shelter. Tremaine's coat and boots were still in the station. That fits. Hypothermia also causes confusion and disorientation. It scrambles memory. It makes people believe things that aren't true. A man freezing to death might think he's somewhere else entirely. He might think he's seeing things that don't exist. The radio transmissions could have been hallucinations. Tremaine talking to himself, believing he was still at his station, still doing his job. Except the transmissions were real. Other people heard them. They were recorded. So maybe Tremaine survived the initial cold. Maybe he found shelter. A cave. A hollow tree. An old trapper's cabin that wasn't on the maps. Maybe he kept the radio with him. Maybe he was trying to call for help. But the cold and the isolation were warping his perception. That would explain the disjointed statements. The confusion about elevation and location. The references to things that didn't make sense. It would also explain why he was never found. The Absarokas are full of places a man could die and never be seen again. Ravines, crevasses, snowdrifts deep enough to bury a body until the thaw. And even then, animals would scatter the remains. There's another possibility. Tremaine might have encountered someone else in the backcountry. Trappers still worked those mountains in the 1920s. Some of them didn't register with the Forest Service. Some of them didn't want to be found. It's possible Tremaine ran into one of them. It's possible something went wrong. A dispute over territory. Maybe. Or an accident. If that were the case, the radio transmissions could have been staged. Someone using Tremaine's radio to create confusion, to delay the search, to cover their tracks. It's not likely, but it's not impossible. The weather itself is another factor. The storms that hit the Absarokas in October of 1923 were severe, even by local standards. Wind speeds exceeded 60 miles per hour. Visibility dropped to zero. The temperature swings were extreme. Conditions like that can create acoustic anomalies. Sound carries strangely in high wind. Voices echo. Directions become unreliable. A man shouting from one ridge might sound like he's on another. Radio signals are even more unpredictable. Atmospheric interference can bounce a transmission across miles of terrain. A signal originating from one location might appear to come from another. The ionosphere, the mountains, even the snow itself. All of it affects how radio waves move. It's conceivable that Tremaine was transmitting from a location much farther away than anyone realized, that the signal was reflecting off the terrain, that the searchers were looking in the wrong place the entire time. That would explain why he was never found. It would also explain the strange content of the transmissions. If Tremaine was miles away, disoriented and dying, he might have been describing a completely different location, a place he thought was Hudoo Basin but wasn't. The human mind, under stress, fills in gaps. Tremaine might have been doing exactly that. These are the rational answers. They account for most of what happened. They fit the available evidence. They don't require anything unusual. And yet, there's one detail that doesn't fit cleanly into any of them. The transmission on November 4th. The one where Tremaine said he could see the station. Holland and the search party were at Hudoo Basin when that transmission came through. They were standing outside the station. They had a clear view of the entire basin and the ridges surrounding it. There was no one there. If Tremaine had been close enough to see the station, they would have seen him. The snow was fresh. Any movement would have left tracks. Any sound would have carried in the cold air. The basin was silent, empty. Holland noted this in his final report. He didn't speculate. He just recorded the fact. The transmission came through while the station was under direct observation, and no one was present. The only explanation that fits is that Tremaine was transmitting from somewhere with a line of sight to the station, but outside the searcher's field of view. A location high enough and far enough away that he could see them, but they couldn't see him. The problem is that no such location exists within the range of the radio equipment Tremaine was using. The units issued by the Forest Service in 1923 had a maximum effective range of about 50 miles under ideal conditions. In mountainous terrain, with atmospheric interference, that range drops significantly. Most rangers reported functional ranges of 10 to 15 miles. Every ridge, every peak, every elevated position within that radius was searched. Some of them were searched multiple times. Tremaine wasn't there, so either the radio had a range far greater than anyone believed possible, or Tremaine was somewhere no one thought to look. The third option is that he wasn't transmitting at all, that the radio was, but he wasn't. That's not an explanation, it's just another gap. The file on Carl Tremaine sits in a storage facility in Billings, Montana. It's thin. Most of the documents are routine, employment records, supply requisitions, incident reports. There are a few photographs. One shows Tremaine standing outside the Hudoo Basin station in the summer of 1923. He's wearing a ranger uniform and a wide-brimmed hat. He's not smiling, but he doesn't look unhappy. He looks like a man doing his job. The last page in the file is a handwritten note from Holland. It's dated March 15th, 1924. It reads, "Closed pending further information. No evidence of foul play. No evidence of survival. Cause of disappearance undetermined." Underneath that, in smaller handwriting, radio transmissions unexplained. The Hudoo Basin station was used again in the summer of 1925. A different ranger was assigned there. He reported no issues. The station was eventually decommissioned in 1947 and allowed to collapse. The logs rotted. The roof caved in. The forest reclaimed it. There's nothing left now but a clearing and a few foundation stones. The radio was never recovered. Every few years, someone asks about it. A historian, a researcher, a hiker who's heard the story. They want to know if the transmissions were real, if there's any chance Tremaine survived. If anyone ever went back to look, the answer is always the same. The transmissions were real. Tremaine didn't survive. And yes, people went back. They didn't find anything. The Absarokas don't give up their secrets easily. They don't explain themselves. A man walks into the high country, and sometimes he doesn't walk out. That's the way it's always been. The only difference is that most men don't keep talking after they're gone.